Without further ado, why don't we call the first panel?
Yes. So first panel, I would like to have with me today Robert Altes, BBVA,
Please.
Stefan Holzhauer, Siemens, Ernesto Chora, Enel, Nicolas Ardei, Volkswagen, and Daniel Szabo, Corporate Digital. Okay. So I think just to give you a reference what we'll be discussing, if you can move one slide further. Again, open innovation is a multifaceted play. There are many different initiatives and many different ways of interacting with startups. We categorize using the model that you can see on the screen, meaning ranging from having an innovation presence, an innovation antenna, an innovation outpost in the main startup ecosystem. We have seen before what they are. Running initiative to deal with early stage startups, call them corporate accelerators, call them venture builders, call them startup studios, call them also entrepreneurship program while you are extracting innovation for your own people, your own employees, and mixing them up with startups. Then we have the so-called venture client, meaning partnering, where the corporates become the client of the startups, and so it's working together in a vendorship-like relationship. Then there are investment, referred as corporate venture capital. And then at the end, we have the acquisition, the M&A play that typically has on the top when something strategic happens. So this is the different models of interaction. Obviously, organization and culture is another important enabler for making things happen. And so I think we'd like to discuss with you guys what are your specialty of the house, again, among the different ways of interacting with startups, what you have seen working, what you have seen working a bit less, what has been your latest development, and what has been the top learning that you can share with your peers. Who's going to start?
Let's go in order, so let's go
Stefan.
Let's start with Stefan.
Yeah, so hi everybody. Is this one working? This one? Okay. This sounds different. Okay. Yeah, first of all, thanks for having us. Also, thanks for the award. And maybe also another comment. A lot of people have been thanking Maria this morning for making this possible, and also Mind the Bridge for making this possible. From my side, also thank you for one of the few times, or maybe the only time, that I feel like I'm underdressed in Silicon Valley. I'm not sure if anyone else sees that. But yeah, I think this is a nice setup. I always particularly enjoy the exchange with other corporates around this topic that I think is really important to us. My name is Stefan. I work for Siemens. I'm located here in the US, so I'm doing exactly what was said before. I'm one of the outposts. I guess the closest category to what we are doing is venture clienting. So we are really trying to early on work together with startups and really understand if they can, together with our technology, help our customers more. I mean, obviously, we would always say that we always make our customers happy, but sometimes there are use cases that we cannot really fulfill by ourselves. And maybe there are some people out there that are just clever or faster or whatever, and you simply need to start early interacting with them. And we honestly find that this is both good for both sides, really. So we quickly learn on what they are doing, how we can maybe also enter that space. For the startup, by the way, it's also great validation working with a big corporate. So as soon as they can have like the Siemens logo on their side, that's also something that they really appreciate. Also, when they really want to get deeper into requirements in the industrial space, we do this every day. So this is also something that helps them a lot. So we're obviously well aligned with our M&A teams. We have like a venture capital arm, Next 47 here in Palo Alto. It's not one thing or the other. The same way it's not Europe or the US. I guess we all have to talk to each other. But we feel like being out here, being close to the startups, connecting them to the right people in headquarters in Germany, this is what really helps both sides.
So Stefan, in the organization of outposts, as we put it in a couple of previous slides, you probably have 3 outposts, right? There's the CVC, Next 47, that's separate. Then there is the R&D center. Still, you have an R&D center here.
We have an R&D center around robotics in Berkeley, which also makes sense, I guess, to be close to the great talents here of the academia institutions. And then there's like the scouts, the technology scouts like myself.
How many people do you count altogether? I know the Next 47 is kind of a separate entity. We can talk in details of CVC being embedded inside a company or somewhat as a spin-off, but how many people would you count?
So just around those categories that you mentioned and leaving out the companies that we bought here, I want to say like 80 maybe.
Okay, 80 people, so pretty sizable.
So 80 innovation hunters in the region, that is quite a number.
Yeah, so that will be including the researchers, right, the M&A guys, and myself.
Good.
Good. Okay.
Move to Robert.
Robert.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Alberto, Marco, the whole Mind the Bridge and the entire delegation for inviting us. My name is Robert Altes, also based in San Francisco. I work for BBVA. BBVA is a global bank, primarily based in Spain, but we do have a very strong presence especially in Latin America. We are like number 2, 3, or 4th bank in all the Latin American countries. Also strong presence in Turkey and in more than 30, with presence in more than 30 countries. I mean, in our case, we started our transformation journey more than 20 years ago, right? And we've been trying different models. And what I think it's interesting for today's session is how we have come to where we are today. And when we started back 20 years ago, we opened some open spaces in the different geographies in the bank. We also created what we call the open talent competition, which actually we brought from many years, more than 6,000 startups. And we're actually...
That would be cool.
Correct. So we were giving them a chance, to pitch, to tell us what they do, and also give them the possibility to try the solutions with us, with the bank. These are one of the first initiatives that we were trying. In 2011, we decided to create what we call the Open Innovation Unit. And by then, we have also been trying some venture and client initiatives. We've been trying to incubate some companies. We've also tried to work with some accelerators, partner with different entities. So it's been different models that we've been trying. And so far, I think we reached a level of maturity where we felt like we had to make a step further. And the reason why I'm saying all that is because it was last year, after trying all different models, that we decided to make 2 different steps. One was to create a completely new unit in the bank, which is called BBVA Spark. That unit is it's a new area, global area, that provides a 360 service to all the growth companies and innovative companies in the different areas and the different phases of their growth and maturity levels. And this area, I would say, summarizes in 3 different pillars. One is what we call banking for growth companies. So basically, we are able to offer all traditional banking products to all these companies. This sounds easy, but it's not so easy, because basically traditional banks, historically, we've never been able to offer basically a corporate card or just even open a current account to these startups. So, and there were some entities here in the US, based in the US, that are able to do that. But in Europe, in other markets, it was not the case. So basically last year, we decided to create this unit, which is offering these products to the startups and growth companies. Second, what we call the venture capital investment unit.
Sorry, Robert, the first one, is that just for Europe or
Globally.
Global.
Basically, we started in Spain. Now we are in Mexico and Colombia as well. We launched a couple of weeks ago. And progressively, we will continue developing this unit all across the globe in our markets. The second one is what we call the venture capital investment. And basically is to lead some investments and to become, as a bank, LPs of several venture capitals in the different markets where we operate. Why? Just to be close to what these VCs are doing to all these startups and growth companies that get all the funds from these VCs. So this is the second one. And the third one is something that we started a long time ago, which is open innovation, but we thought that this should be integrated within what we call now BBVA Spark, because at the end of the day, you are also serving these companies, giving them the chance to connect with the bank and try the solutions. So it's a win-win approach for them and for us, right? And on this last topic, we also made the decision to concentrate and manage all the open innovation efforts globally for all our geographies from here, from Silicon Valley, from San Francisco. This was quite unique. It was a big step forward made in the bank, the big decision. But the main reason for that is we thought Silicon Valley is the mecca of the innovation, where all this ecosystem, it's probably the richest, across the different markets where we operate. And we thought it would make sense to have it from here.
So there are two things looking at the BBVA experience again. Under our attention again, we're following what you guys have been doing for the past 10 years. And number one is the last step that you took, meaning moving the headquarters of open innovation in Silicon Valley. That again could make sense, but at the end is a very, very bold decision. And the second is the decision to spun out the corporate venture capital. You have BBVA Ventures, and I think it was 2016-17, has been spun out in Probal Ventures. Now it's an independent entity. And again, going back to Siemens, Next 47 is a pretty close similar decision. Santander has done the same with more capital. Again, it's a trend that we are seeing more and more on the market. So again, this is two things that are super interesting to mirror.
In the process, Robert, how many people are now working out of this office here in downtown, and how many global that are reporting to that office?
Yeah, I would say in the office here, we are around 12, 13 people, excluding the people that are working directly on the companies, as well as our corporate venture capital. So that's but just purely. But then globally, we are around 50 plus people, because all different countries are reporting here and working with us directly.
Got it. It's probably, if I can think of, you're probably the only entity today that has the open innovation head of a European corporate in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco. I think a lot of people are here, but I mean, I'm happy to be proved wrong, but that's to my knowledge, that's probably the case. Daniel, your turn.
Yeah, good. Does it work? Yeah. Good seeing you again. Yeah, maybe Daniel Szabo, I work for Kerber. It's an industrial hidden champion, I would say. And what we do is a little bit different from what you've heard before. So we ultimately took the challenge on how to transfer the traditional machine building business into the future by running or setting up a venture studio, meaning we really incubate our own ideas. When we find a winning idea, we hire a management team and we spin out software companies. So we focus on building AI-driven software as a service companies for the manufacturing industries, and we're probably one of the largest players in that in Europe with around 500 people. You ask a little bit what is new, what we're doing. So what we started realizing is in that domain of AI software products for manufacturing industries, that is a European sweet spot. So I think this is really a play where Europe can really play a big role in the future. And how do we realize that we really have a competitive edge as a region? First of all, we always look for acquisition candidates ourselves. And what we start realizing that also big companies, also in the US, also in the Valley, that have a lot of funding. So I talk hundreds of millions, they have single-digit million revenues. We manage that with significant less capital. And we got approached by a lot of American VC firms if they're able to invest. Typically, that was not the idea from the beginning, but we're now starting to raise a Series A capital round for one of our first software companies because we are really differentiating in that sense from the traction that we're having and the domain expertise. And maybe that's a point for Europe as well. I mean, the capital efficiency that you can get out of the talent with Europe is tremendous. And I think there is also a secret sauce because in Europe we have domain expertise with thousands of years or hundreds of years in enabling manufacturing industries around the world. We have the best talent, for example, in AI. Most people don't know. The biggest pool of AI talent worldwide is in Europe. Just the biggest funding is in the US and the biggest companies. And I think there lies the secret sauce.
I think the experience from Corporate is super interesting for two reasons. Number one is because, again, in this panel, probably it's a smaller company. I think it's a Mittelstand. So it's an example of mid-sized company that was able to, first of all, digitalize themselves, and secondly, try to industrialize the process. And again, today, one of the hottest topic in open innovation is called venture builder. Most of companies are trying to do so. Just a few of them are probably got how to do it and believe that what you guys have been doing, spanning out initiative and now also trying to put them on the market and capitalize externally is a very reference model that we should definitely take a deeper look at.
And Daniel, for the not technical crowd here, tell us a little bit what is venture building within a corporate, and maybe with an example of something that you're working on scaling.
Yeah, so venture building, maybe let's, quick one. So one is corporate venture capital, what you've heard, you basically take money and you invest it into a company. It's a for-profit investment. So that's the same as venture capital in a nutshell. Then you have venture client, what you've heard, which is basically you look for early startups and you basically enable them to sell to you and to utilize their technology to digitize yourself most of the time. And what we're doing is basically the next step, which is venture building, which is we basically build companies. So I personally love my job because I'm a serial entrepreneur on steroids, because we create 1 to 2 companies every year. And what we actually really do, we look for an idea, and I make it now very simple, so I know what we're doing. So we look for an idea and say, oh, cool, food truck with cronuts, yeah? Super cool. Then we say, hey, is there a market for food trucks for cronuts? Then we say, yeah, let's look at it. And I say, okay, we think we can make a business out of that. And then we basically decide to create a company, meaning we spin out an entity, we look in the market for talent to run a company, food truck concept, so we look for a bakery, a pastry chef, and then we look for somebody who is running it, and then we literally build up a company with all the operations, but we own it to 100% in that sense. So we basically build companies, which I think company builder is the better term than venture studio. It's technically just building companies over and over again, and not with investing in external entrepreneurs, by basically hiring people to be entrepreneurs for you.
And is your end result, specifically in your case, to sell those, or to typically over time to create new business units that still belong to the mothership?
So the overall strategy is to build a fruitful future for this company that's around 76 years old right now, by building reliable equity that is backed by technology. So what this means though is, like, in principle we want to keep shares of it, but we are capitalizing externally, so that we will not own 100% of it. And that is basically the evolution, that building tech and software companies is a very expensive game. You need a lot of scale, so we basically decided to rather have, let's say, 20% of watermelon instead of having a full apple or something like that. So that's, I mean, it's different, I think, to what you see.
Comparing to Apple here is a complicated game here, but still.
Yeah, I would change the fruit. You know, stock oranges. Ernesto, you're next. You're home here, and Enel has been one of the leaders in activities of open innovation for the longest in Europe. So, give us a little bit of a sense of the progression of Enel as a group in activities that you are leading.
Okay, just a brief story. I have read a book in 2003 written by Professor Harry Chersbrook. The title of this book was Open Innovation. I was in love with this book, and I started a company, my private company, as a consulting company focused on helping companies to make open innovation come true. I sold this company in 2014 after having supported companies around the world, from Finland to Spain, from France to Great Britain, to Italy and United States, and I've joined Enel. And I failed many times. Failure is normal if you want to try something new. If you never fail, you must be Brad Pitt. Otherwise, it's normal that you will not be able to conquer all the ladies that you want. I know that this is forbidden in the United States, yes, like a metaphor, but I use this because I'm always a rebel. And so I never respect all the rules. What we have done, being humble and admitting that the best innovators don't work for Enel, for our company, we were looking for the best innovators around the world. So we established a corporate antenna, or an innovation hub, as we call it, in Tel Aviv in 2016. The second one was established here in the Bay Area. We decided to have this hub at the Berkeley University. You were saying, no, you are wrong. It's better to stay in San Francisco. Why are you going to Berkeley? I insisted. I want to go to Berkeley. I was wrong. And we spent 1 year in Berkeley having this a lot of relationship with startups coming from the Berkeley ecosystem, great minds, great professors, but professors know how to make research. Many cases, they don't know how to make money, how to make business. So we had to admit that we were wrong, that you were right, and we relocated here. So this is the Enel Innovation Hub too, not only the Mind the Bridge house. And we were in this journey supported by Mind the Bridge, but not only Mind the Bridge. We have created an ecosystem in about the energy transition here in the United States after we established a new innovation hub in Boston and a new one in Rio de Janeiro, in Santiago de Chile, in Madrid, also in Moscow for some years, and in Italy. And we have a network of physical hubs and digital hubs like the ones that we have in Berlin, in Paris, in London. And I give you some figures, just some figures, and I stop. Because I think that engineers don't trust people. Engineers trust metrics. That's why, and it's crowded of engineers in companies, so if you don't share figures, they say, I don't trust you. Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer. But I love engineers because, okay, my CEO is an engineer, so I must love them. Some figures.
You're on tape here, so.
Okay. Some figures. 14,300 startups scouted in the last 10 years. 14,300. 545 activated startups. That is to say that we have managed projects, innovation projects, investing money with 585 startups. And we have scaled up 125 of them. 125 startups scaled at global level. With Enel, we are active in 35 countries. We are the largest producer of renewables in the world. We are the leader of renewables in the United States. We have the charging stations to recharge electric cars that are the best seller on Amazon in the United States. We have the largest electric grids in the world. And just to compare the electric grid of California with the electric grid that we have in Italy or in Spain, unfortunately, California is 25 years behind Italy and Spain, unfortunately. Here you have people knocking the door and asking you to check the meter, because the meter is not smart. We have literally invented in 1997 the smart meter, and we have provided 100% of homes in Italy in the year 2000 with the smart meter. And some figures about money that we have created. 3 billion of net value created in the last 6 years, not considering capital gain. We have launched into the market 3 companies, Open Fiber, with 50% of the value of the company, the shares of the company. We have achieved 1.6 billion of capital gain. We created a unicorn, 10 billion value. We have launched into the market Grid Expertise, that is a spin-off of our innovation team, focused only on grids, another billion of market cap. We have sold 50%, getting 500 million. And we have launched another company focused on e-health, and we are going to launch another one. This is the company that has just the IP, only the IP, that we have created on research and innovation on photovoltaic panels. The value of the company, without any asset, just the IP, is more or less 200 million. So we have created a total value, more or less, of 5 billion in the last 6 years, net value, and we couldn't do more or less the 75%, we couldn't achieve the 75% of this value without the support of our open innovation ecosystem. It wasn't impossible, because we are not the best people. The best people don't work in our companies. The best people are outside. They are curious, they are passionate, they don't want to work in a big company. They hate such big companies. Too much bureaucracy, too many rules, too many procedures. They don't like you. Please don't hire them. Don't buy them. Venture capital, from my point of view, corporate venture capital is useless. I know that you do. And we were saying many years ago, you kill the companies. when we have bought a company with such approach, we have killed them. I was an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, for many years. Founded 3 companies, the first one when I was 19 years old, and sold them to funds. And I have understood that big companies can provide assets, labs, people, and even money for projects. But please don't buy my shares when I'm so small. Otherwise, you will kill me.
That's one of the reasons why Enel doesn't have a corporate venture capital. We can
Yeah.
talk at length of that. Volkswagen turn, maybe the easy question, so tell us a little bit about the representation of Volkswagen on the innovation side in the Bay Area.
Sure, it would be my pleasure. So it's my pleasure also to be here, so thank you for inviting us. Yeah, the Volkswagen Group is a big entity with a lot of different brands who have a competitive heritage. So it's the first step is to bring them together to an open innovation system internally already. And of course, we are not the best people of the world. That's absolutely true. And so if we look back, let's say about 10 years, then you would have found the innovation community of Volkswagen digging into their top secret labs and providing an expert and top expert for any screw of a vehicle. And but this is a very slow process of innovation. So of course, you have to reach out the exciting community out there with all those startups and academia, commercial research institutes, and the tech industry in general. So let us focus on those strengths which we have. It's a system competency to how to build a car, how to integrate technologies, and what we know what we would need and what our customers would like to have. But looking on all these single innovations, single technologies, it's much better to rely on what's going on out there. You would be much faster if you grab this and integrate it into what we have as a business. So that's, of course, the reason why we are here in the Silicon Valley. Of course, Silicon Valley is the classical innovation hotspot where every big corporate showed up first when they left their companies. Meanwhile, we have a footprint, of course, in Asia, in Japan, China, Singapore, in Israel, of course, very relevant hotspot, and of course, US at several locations. And our Silicon Valley entity innovation center is quite big. It's in total about 150 employees, 50 of them more for R&D topics, and 100 of them really dedicated to innovation. And it's not only a scouting unit, it's of course also providing a collaboration laboratory to do the POCs on site, and to be open to the startups to collaborate with us, and if it is worthwhile, to also invest in those startups.
Nikolai, very quick, because before I mentioned that the R&D, large R&D centers are kind of a legacy, or something that got started 20, 30, 40 years ago. When was the first R&D center of Volkswagen established here?
Oh, I don't remember the right date, to be honest, but it's at least 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think probably before, in the 90s.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of the changing scenario here, that obviously you try to be more effective with also with your capital. Yeah. I had just a question, and we have probably five minutes here to have some sharing of your ideas. Mine is also for folks here that are in the room that might sit in the same seats as you do. Most of you report to top management. Some of you directed to CEO, most of you to top management in general. How do you convince, or maybe a practical example of how have you convinced your boss, the CEO of the company, to do having a different approach and a significant investment size that was not planned from before into a new areas that you think is really worth the investment. So give us some of your experience of how you were able to convince your top management that it makes sense to go in different route.
What we did is basically twofold. One was, first of all, to change the dynamics, the KPIs to measure. So we measure our success in equity value, not in profit contribution, because then it would be a lost game before we even started. And I think the second one is a little bit very much fact-driven, is what is the alternative? Because if you look at, I mean, okay, it came down a little bit, but if you looked, let's say, a year ago, successful software companies, once they are de-risked for how much money they are traded, at least in the industry segment we are playing it, Clara is playing it, it's mid-size, right? It's a $3 billion company. They're not going to buy a 50 million software business for $2 billion. It's not, and that would be even not expensive. In that sense, and that's a little bit the argumentation. Okay, what is your alternative? Because in 10, 15 years, not to have winning digital solutions, this is not an option, right? Everyone understands. To wait until a winner comes out and to acquire it, very difficult. I mean, for Volkswagen and Enel, it might work, but not for the segment we're playing at. And thirdly, just hoping that it comes out of the core business is also not an option, because that's proven the last 20 years it's not coming out naturally. So that's a little bit the argumentation which we used, which I think resonated quite well.
Good. Sounds like a success story. Siemens.
Just very briefly, in our case, I would say as a traditional bank, we are a very old entity, and in some cases using and leveraging very old systems. And we do have a lot of legacy. It's normal, we've been operating for many years, and with all these digital transformations happening so quickly over the past few years, I mean, there is always this balance. Of course, we need to provide these different business cases and justify the investments, but at the end of the day, it's a trade-off. Whether you want to build things in-house and develop them, or leverage of the innovation technology that's coming from outside. And for us, we've made several investments over the past few years, and this has been the key factor. Like, if we want to develop that, we have to contemplate and consider so many factors that affect the whole legacy of our systems, that it makes more sense to go for that particular investment. For example, when we acquired or bought OpenPay, which is our payments platform, operating now in many countries within Latin America, that was the main rationale, besides obviously financial reasons, right? But we decided we needed to have a more robust and enhanced platform to the needs that the customers have nowadays today, that could be easily implemented within the bank rather than implementing all that in-house. That's the main reason we use when discussing internally.
Siemens.
Yeah, so maybe also adding two perspectives to that question, how to convince the top management. I think what I recently experienced is one thing, because we obviously also drive internal innovation and R&D. I mean, obviously we do. And also we try to innovate in that way. So we also have like internal startups, obviously, because then things might go a bit better if you do it the right way. But also then again, for these internal startups, you need to ask the question, do you need to do it yourselves? I mean, we have a lot of top engineers within Siemens. Of course, we can do it ourselves. The question is, do we always need to do it ourselves simply because our customer needs it? Or can we maybe potentially also partner? And do we have to enter this now and put like, I don't know, 12 million R&D on this? Or is there someone out there who does it already, and can we connect to them quickly and see if it works?
But that's a change of culture though, right?
It is.
Not built here is something that is so hard to readdress.
Big deal. And honestly, we just talked about that this morning with two of my colleagues who are sitting there. It really depends on when you ask these questions. So when you have these internal startups and they are already running and committed, then you basically have zero chance to bringing in something external. Maybe as a benchmark later on to see what works better, to congratulate yourselves for the internal work or whatever. But if you do this just before it happens, before those startups actually start running, and then you can say, okay, we could do this, but also outside there are these players, shouldn't we evaluate if they do the job already? Then you still have a chance to open the door and maybe also pinpoint on that. A second topic, maybe just to mention about what's the alternative, what you said before. Especially in our case, industrial space, we are also working a lot with car manufacturers, obviously, and battery cell manufacturing is a big deal, as I guess most of you have noticed. And very dynamic space, the market is basically establishing itself within a few years, where otherwise markets like this would only be established in decades, I guess. You can't always count on having the right things to do internally and being there on time internally. Very dynamic space, a lot of former Tesla colleagues building startups working on these topics. You need to connect to them and see who works well with you so we can make our customers happy. And that actually works well with management. We got quite some traction there. So that works.
I think we're time maybe for last question.
Yes, I don't know if you want to share some experiences or you.
Just me, very fast. I don't need to convince the top management because I am a top manager.
Yeah, you need to convince the CEO, right? So
No,
that's why I was looking
I'm
at
just
you.
one boss, the CEO.
Yeah.
I'm not any other boss, and I have people managing innovation, the change in every function, in every business line, in every country. They depend on me and the global head of this area. People think that innovation can happen just with technology. We have literally invented a bond that has created a revolution in the sustainable finance at global level. Forbes wrote an article in 2019. How could it be possible that these people from Italy, that is to say the third world country, and from the energy sector, because energy people in the United States that are like at the stone age of innovation could create a revolution. This was the content of the article, could create a revolution in the sustainable finance that we are not created in the United States. We have literally invented the SDG-linked bond, a bond that is linked with the SDG and your ability to achieve some results in a specific SDG. Now this asset class value is 300 billion at global level. We have been copied by Tesco, Chanel, GE, and many other companies, and we are happy for this. And we have saved more than 120 million a year in terms of interest that we are paying because the markets have understood that we are more sustainable, so we pay less. But this is innovation. It's not linked with technology. Every part of the company can be disrupted. Do you have innovation people in the legal department? Do you have in the audit? Do you have them in the HR? Why don't you use AI in the legal department, as we do, to understand if we can go on the litigation or we have to give up? These are just examples because, so the structure, the innovation management should be crucial, not me, not a single decision. But if you structure an innovation management system, collecting needs from every department and answering these needs with concrete solutions and achieving measurable results, you are not to convince anybody. They are knocking your doors, asking, hey, please, get in contact with Marinucci to find a startup that can solve this challenge. Because everything is programmed to have a fully, continuously innovative company.
Perhaps one further point. So automotive industry is undergoing a huge transformation at the moment with a rapid speed. And a so strong competition, also especially from China, where they are so fast. And so for this reason, there's a huge hunger for innovation. So it is definitely not an issue or not a challenge to convince our board if we have a good idea. So they are really hungry for that. It just should fit basically the main strategy of the company, that's for sure. And sometimes if it is hard to implement an innovation, you need, of course, a board member sponsor that helps a lot. But at the moment, we are in a very innovative climate.
So you feel the pressure already from...
Yeah.
I think there is a question here that is... you want to shout it out?
That's a pity, yes.
They are in the next panel.
So the first is a very simple question, goes straight to the point. The second one can go for a long time. So we'll try to get just a hint. You wanna cover first?
I don't need to pressure them. They have understood that if they use startups, they can
No, the other question. The other question. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, billion. Yeah, yeah. We didn't invest in another company. We founded with our people companies. We leveraged the entrepreneurship of people at Enel.
So give an example of one of those units, just what they do. You mentioned before. Maybe
Okay, I give this example. Open Fiber. No? Open Fiber is a company that started from an idea. Why don't we use our grids to provide fiber optic access to homes and companies? Italy was the worst country with Greece and Portugal in Europe for fiber optic ultra broadband access. So we had a problem. When you have a problem, when you have an SDG, it's a sustainable development goal, in this case access to the broadband, when you have a problem, you can make a lot of money if you are able to solve this problem. So we have this idea, why don't we use our poles, our pipelines, instead of establishing other poles and other pipelines, we use the existing one, the current one, to provide fiber optic access to the homes and to the buildings. We did. We have found a financial partner, CDP, and thanks to this company, we have invested 3.6 billion, if I remember well, and in 5 years, we have created a 10 billion value company. And after we have sold this company to Macquarie, that is a fund. This started from internal entrepreneurship because we think that startups are very useful if they have a product with a TRL at least 4 or 5 that you can test, you can work with them, you can adopt this solution, and you can help to scale up, and you can use the solution. But if you have entrepreneurs in your company, why don't you allow them? I give you an example, just one example. 2 guys came to me. They were former employees at Eni, another big important company here. We have people from Eni. They were great people, and they had idea how to protect critical infrastructures, okay? And these guys came to me with 0 revenues, 0, and they had just an idea. We wanted to create a revolution in infrastructures and how to defend these infrastructures. We helped them. We hosted them in 1 hydroelectric plant, after in 2 hydroelectric plants, after in 15 hydroelectric plants, after we have adopted their solution in all our grids. Now they are headquartered in San Francisco. They serve 46 countries. The value of this company is more or less a unicorn. And when the president of the Italian Republic came here, he wanted to meet these guys. And when I met them, they had 0 revenues, okay? We couldn't buy this company because if we bought, we could kill this company. But we could act as a customer, as a co-innovator, and even we connected them with a network of our venture capitalists that we have. We have more than 150 venture capital funds. We collaborate with them from many countries. We have already 150 billion of assets under management today, so they don't need our money. It's plenty of money. But we need to have our people managing the everyday business, supporting with a concrete advice, concrete project, industrial project. It's very easy to spend money and say, I'm an innovator. This is not being an innovator. Innovators change the way they work. Innovators kill their paradigms, their prejudices, the way they have thought in the past. Innovators are able to say, I was stupid because I said to them that being at Berkeley was better. Innovators make a lot of failures, but they don't trust. They don't care, sorry, because they love failing. Because if you never fail, you never succeed. And you never fail, there is not excitement. So this is exactly what we are doing, not with the innovation people, with all the company. People managing the maintenance, the operations, the finance. All people are called to express their challenges. All people are called to be entrepreneurs. And we found we can find the money. If they have ideas, we can establish new companies, and we can sell them.
I think it was pretty clear now on the model. In the interest of time, how does Volkswagen convince a very cool scale-up in working with them, not with a, to paraphrase what she's asked, right? To being afraid of being too slow and spending too much time in things and cycles that might not be startup appropriate.
Now this is really an issue what you addressed here, and in fact, big corporate has rules, has processes which are really, really slow. And it could have taken almost 1 year to get a startup onboarded in former times at Volkswagen, for instance. And but meanwhile, we got our tailored processes in that regard. So we have our own lawyer in the innovation department. We have our own purchasing there. We have simplified rules which are tailored to manage these rather small risks which are involved with our startup collaborations, rather than with big collaborations with our suppliers. That's clear. So we need to have these specified, tailored processes, and then it works quite quick. Then a process which takes normally 1 year in a corporate like ours could be cut down to 2 weeks. And of course, you have to show a collaboration garage for that. You have to have these professional venture client processes, and then it works. It works. It can be really, really quick.
Right. So basically, you have to have a different channel specifically dedicated to startup. I think we're out of time, and we'll have time to chat over lunch. So thanks all the panelists here. Thank you. It's now time to switch.
Yes, I think let's go quickly again. The structure is the same that we discussed before. I think might be useful to understand which areas you're currently covering. And so I don't know, Yvonne, you want to take it from you? And we have pretty comprehensive, as Robert Bosch, effort in terms of innovation.
Yeah, sure. Where to start? So I am part of an innovation outpost here in Silicon Valley. We are 4 people that are doing venture capital investments here for Bosch. For the venture group, we have also an office in Boston. We have 2 offices in Germany, in Israel, and in China. So we do corporate venture capital investments all over the world, basically, with a very strong financial focus, but of course with some strategic relevance and focus to Bosch. And I mean, the question is always, why do you do venture capital investments in the first place? And it's like many other speakers also mentioned, it's all about opening Bosch for open innovation, because at the end we cannot do everything ourselves with the pace the world requires today to stay competitive.
And just to help to understand, Robert Bosch is one of the few companies that having a real corporate capital fund, actually their fund.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, at the end, the money comes from the balance sheet because it's one LP, but we structure our money like funds. That means we go to our board of management like every 3 maybe years. That's the typical investment cycle, and we ask for money for a fund. Currently, we're investing out of Fund 5. That's a 250 million euro fund. All 5 funds together are, I don't know, 800, 900 million, almost $1 billion. Yeah, when the US dollar was weaker, it was actually easier because then you could say it's 1 billion US. Nowadays, it's all the same. And and we do capital calls like a regular VC. So we invest in 3 years, maybe the 250 million euro worldwide. And then we have a fund life cycle of 10 years that you know, defines how long time we have to actually monetize the investments we do.
Going to Orange, again, big telco, you have a presence here since a while. Gabriel, give us a snapshot of Orange and what you guys have been doing.
So as you said, we were established in 1999. And we went through all these experiments as to what we should be doing. I remember when I joined in 2001, we were doing pure development. and spinning off companies, startups. And over time, going through the journey that all companies have gone, we went through, we had an investment arm, which is really separate from Orange Silicon Valley, but it has a US presence. And it was really a CVC, but there's this kind of attraction to becoming a VC if you're a CVC, because it's really, money is the only way to measure your success.
How many years did that last? Because that's it's good to see the waves of models.
We have a company called Innovating that was a pure VC. It shut all its funds, at least its association with Orange, and then we became a CVC, Orange Digital Ventures, and that's what we have now. Our role there is to do the technical due diligence and to sit on boards of U.S. companies that they invest in.
Maybe since we're here, you're one of the most historic SCPs, also been here a very long time, but maybe on your side, how in these 20 years of activities of the Outpost, and we used to actually, it was close to my office at Google there at the time, so we were there all the time. How is that different today, your sense of presence here versus when it was initially established?
So I'd say the first 10 years we were here, it was about, everything was about software, the development of software. There was, some of you remember Web 2.0, there was a language called Ajax that was essential to it, and really that competence was here in the Valley. Since then, of course, it's become democratized, and new software is picked up right away, right? But our initial reason for being here was to understand the internet protocol. To a telco, that was a real odd fish, this thing that best effort, right? So that was what we're set up. Of course, now everything we do is around that. So, but I think what has been happening is that you've seen VCs go from purely financial to kind of bleed into CVC. If you look at some of the more successful big VCs, they actually have whole business development, marketing people to help the startups beyond just putting in the money. I think that's one major change. I think the other one has been a much more move from quantity of startups to quality. I remember, early on, there was a lot of accelerators and incubators, and it was the old kind of direct
days every day.
Yeah, direct mail type of thing. Let's have 1,000 startups in one place, and maybe one or two will become, a Google or a Facebook. So I think we've seen a shift towards more quality, much more focused, and this is the way we work. I mean, we've had an incubator, but we've since changed the process to just working with Orange, our colleagues, working with Orange's clients, and then finding the best startups who have the solution. The other way was you would have a bunch of startups in your incubator or accelerator, and then you brought corporates to meet them, and hopefully there was a concordance of wants. Or
so you're playing more of an ecosystem player there, because I remember having a lot of demo days with a number of your partners. So how many people are there today?
Today we're 30 people.
30 people.
Yeah, really focused when we evaluate startups, and then we always almost do a proof of concept or a rapid prototype. That is, that we customize to one of Orange's or one of its clients' needs.
Okay. Eni. Clara. Eni has beyond that presence over here. We have also our corporate venture capital arm based in the East Coast in Boston. Tell us a bit about how you structure activities and what you do.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm Clara, I'm the CEO of Eni Next, that is the corporate venture capital vehicle of Eni. We are based in Boston, and we are there. We decided to be there because there was our long-standing relationship with MIT. So again, university are important, and connection, and also because there is an ecosystem there. So we started there. We have also a branch in UK, so we are also in Europe. And here in San Francisco, we have an outpost, innovation outpost. And in these days, my team is here to meet startup in the field we are investing. So where we are investing in technologies and business model that innovative business model that could help the energy transition. So breakthrough technologies. We are, let's say, a company as Eni that take risk. So we are risking our DNA. So we like to play a role in this energy transition. So we want to focus on that. Our sectors are fusion, hydrogen, energy storage, quantum computing, and critical elements. So many things that could help the world to change. So these are our points.
What's the size? Just give a sense of a size of tickets that you write and the size of committed capital.
Let's say it depends from where the startup are. If we are pre-seed or seed or Series A, we can have tickets from 1 to 10 million. But we are also, as you know, we can invest also more depending on what we think is the value that we can create. So one important point that I want to add is that for us, it's not just a matter of investing money. We think we can create value for the startup, for creating a networking with any ecosystem that has the market around the world. We are everywhere. We have the competency know-how in the corporate level. We have a lot of suppliers and networking, so we think we can help startup, not kill the startup. So this is our...
So you basically have the two arms. One is the pure investing CVC that works in collaboration with the more of the venture client and somebody that is helping doing procurement and looking for partners early stage.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's move to last but not least to SAP. Again, it would be important to explain a bit what SAP.io does, and then also we have also the venture capital arm that is supplied.
Okay, thank you, Alberto, and thank you for the invitation. My name's Paul. I lead business development for SAP.io, which is SAP's early stage startup accelerator. So SAP has been in the Valley for 35 years from our R&D center perspective. We have a labs based in Palo Alto. It is one of the largest employers in the Valley. But from an IO perspective, where we've been heavily focused on startups, we started in 2017. And when we started SAP.io, we started as a combination of a CVC, an accelerator, as well as an entrepreneurship organization. So on the CVC side, primarily focused on market sensing, and we wanted to bring money to the table, so we were a strategic investor and investing in seed and very early stage startups. Again, from a market sensing perspective and also collaborating with VCs in that space. And then on the entrepreneurship side, so internal venture studio, similar to what some of the prior panelists said, looking for ideas internal to SAP, investing in those individuals, pulling them out of their day job, investing in them as if they were internal startups, and giving them the patient capital needed to start organizations inside of SAP. On the accelerator side, in 2017, we started with, I think, two accelerators, one in San Francisco, the other in Berlin. We now have 11 accelerators globally, 3 in the Americas, 4 in Europe, and 4 in Asia. And across these accelerators, we are working with and bringing in approximately 100 to 110 startups per year, and really with the intent of building an ecosystem around SAP. So with these accelerators, we do see opportunities to pilot for SAP. We have made some acquisitions of startups that have gone through these accelerators, but for us, our primary intent, our primary goal is to build an ecosystem of innovative partners around SAP for the benefit of our customers.
You touched a very interesting point, that beyond how much we love to categorize actions, at the end what we are really looking at is a substantial hybridization of models. Again, you're mentioning that SAP.io is in between entrepreneurship, accelerators, and venture capital.
And I should say that our CVC Our venture capital, we closed in late 2019. So that's an evolution where we're no longer making investments out of that fund. We saw that from a market sensing perspective, we were getting that from our accelerators. And in addition, we also, Sapphire Ventures, which is external to SAP, but we are 98% of the LP base for that venture capital fund, also is kind of how we operate when it comes to VC.
And then, going back to the prior point, if you look at Bosch, you have beyond the Robert Bosch Venture Capital, that is the CVC arm of Bosch, you have now Open Bosch. So you span out a sort of venture client unit inside the corporate venture client. Why that? I know, but I think it's important to share.
Yeah, and thanks for giving me this this hint. I forgot about the whole, the bigger story because I'm focusing on venture capital. So sorry for that. I mean, Bosch. I realized Bosch has also, like, same year, 1999. Bosch started actually in Silicon Valley, also with corporations with universities. Yeah, we realized after we do corporate venture capital now for 15 years, and like 5 years ago, we also thought about how can we accelerate actually real cooperations between the startups we invest in, the startups we see, because that's much more than we invest in only. How can we foster this collaboration with the business units of Bosch much, much more? And we came to the conclusion that venture clienting is probably the most efficient vehicle. So we have now a small organization, a small but very mighty team of 4 people in the venture group. The important thing is they are part of the venture group and we all have the same KPIs and the same targets. So we are in the same boat and they do not investing, they do only enable collaborations between the startups and the cooperation. And this includes, Nikolai mentioned it before, this includes making the procurement process like from half a year to 2 weeks. This includes that in the beginning, we kind of had to push, to some extent, innovation into the organization, finding some lighthouse projects where things worked, making them, like telling the stories and making them like prominent in the Bosch organization. And then time over time, and now it's 5 years in, the different business units started to pull. So they call us, they call the Open Bosch team, we need a problem for solving this, and we need a solution for solving this and this problem. Do you know any startups in that space? And then this venture clienting machine starts running, and we always find something. We always find startups in that space. Sometimes it's actually not a startup. Sometimes it might be just a supplier we overlooked, which is smaller than the established ones. Very often it's startups. They do proof of concepts, and then the ideal goal is that out of the proof of concepts, like a partnership, commercial relationship in any shape or form will occur.
Let me ask you the same question that I asked Philip Rose, I think was back in 2017 in Stuttgart. And I asked him, how many companies Bosch as a group acquired out of the Robert Bosch Venture Capital portfolio companies? I remember his answer. I know in
it's
the past.
Still the same.
Okay, so.
The answer is 0. And we are totally fine with that because we are not that strategic. We don't invest in startups to acquire them later on, even though thinking about, do we have a benefit acquiring the startup? If the answer is yes, this kind gives us the answer whether this is a strategic fit or not. But it doesn't have to be, because we also invest in spaces like quantum computing. Maybe Bosch is not going to build quantum computers in the future, so maybe we don't want to acquire that startup, but investing in that startup, being forced to learn more about that ecosystem, because we are on the board, helps us a lot to better understand the potential of this technology for Bosch in the future.
See if there are questions. I have a question before we open to the public. Question that might be a little controversial, maybe, especially this time of the day. That is the power, positive, negative of your branding. And in a corporate branding is something that is untouchable, right? But back to the question that we had before, how do you convince companies, local startups, actually super fast here, they have a million different options to work with you when your brand, what you represent, is not necessarily something positive. And I want to ask specifically from the, for the ones of you that have been here the longest, because you know better than me that you need to be humble, come here. There is so much that nobody cares about your brand. Sometimes actually it brings some burden, right? So let's be clear about that with some of the startups. So, and that was it also, you know, kind of the input of rechanging sometimes the CVC into a different brand is also to kind of disassociate what you're doing with it. So your ideas about the power branding and when is a good time to rebrand, for example. Each of you actually have programs that has you know, an extra word associated to the brand. Some of you actually have something that is totally different from the brand. Any thoughts that you might have?
Oh, yeah. So I guess for Orange, we kind of, you know, we don't operate in the U.S., at least on the consumer level. We operate on the enterprise level. So I haven't found brand to be you know, an issue because we're not that known. You know, we have to explain to people who we are. Now, one way you mitigate that, though, if there was, we tend to work with startups and, you know, later stage startups as well, who have a natural affinity to our business. So we have a consumer business. So we're looking, for example, when smart home was the big thing, you know, we would work with companies who have solution who saw that, yeah, it's Orange and they have a powerful client set, whether it's in Europe, in France, in Belgium, in Egypt, which is one of our larger markets. So I think that I haven't seen that, but the rebranding is important because it's also important internally for people to change the way they think. You know, okay, we're not Fab, Orange Fab anymore. We're, you know, another program, right? So
Orange Fab was the name of the Outpost initiative.
Yeah, well, the accelerator.
Accelerator.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. I just mentioned quickly, we never rebranded us as a different name. We just decided we go with the Bosch brand because overall the Bosch brand is still perceived very well. In US, sometimes people just don't know, but then I mentioned dishwasher and everyone knows. It's detrimental because young startups, sometimes they don't want to be tied to one corporate. But it's not because of Bosch, it's just because they don't want to have like this painted with one CVC. One solution can be that several CVCs. So, for example, we invested in this one startup together with Continental, our largest enemy, which produced a lot of positive noise. So that's a solution, or we just wait for the next round of financing.
For us, I think it was important for us to go to market with a new brand outside of SAP and to initially, when we started from the beginning, be SAP.io. SAP is not a well-known brand in the Valley, even though we've been here for so long. It's not, you know, it's not the sexy Google and other technology companies here. And so combining the new brand along with the CVC where we could invest strategically, I think gave us traction and credibility. Where I have seen our broader SAP brand be somewhat of a negative is when we are working with the startups and startups that we only target enterprise B2B startups. And so they understand our customer base. They understand that we have a significant customer base. And so with that does come a lot of expectations from the startups that we bring into our programs as far as opening the doors to these customers and generating leads and opportunities where it's not that easy. That's not, so they see us potentially as our customer base and not only as the accelerator.
So with respect to us, I think that being a brand as Eni is added value. So I think showing startup that we can help them to accelerate, to assess market, to have a strategic partnership could be feasible, and startup come to us because behind there is Eni. So I think is a plus if the corporate venture capital work as a corporate venture capital and not only venture capital.
I think we're time for one question, if anybody has a burning question. Yes, somewhere there. No, otherwise, I think it might be time to conclude and do a closing here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, the panelists.